Welcome to Crown Corner for the 27th day of July 2022. Will Pelagic, Jessica Charman here with you as we recap the week that was for Charlotte FC against both Chelsea and Toronto and look ahead to Columbus Crew. What's up, Jess? How are you?
Just about surviving, trying to forget what had happened, but we've got a due diligence to do, and we'll get into what happened last weekend. And as always, hopeful for a reprieve on Saturday against Columbus, like you mentioned.
Can we just spend the entire time of the recap talking about Wednesday and not Saturday? Because that would make me feel a little bit better than having to go back and relive what was a first half to forget against Toronto, just because I do feel like that wasn't an indication of a lot of the good feelings that we'd had, although two of the last four halves of football that we've seen from Charlotte FC have been perplexing. That second half against Miami and the first half against Toronto did not show us our best selves, yet the first half against Miami, at least the two goals part of it, and the second half against a Miami side that, or against a Toronto side that, albeit took out two of its better players, at least looked a little bit more like the team that we're used to seeing.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you mentioned the Inter Miami game as well. It does seem like one of the things we've struggled with this entire season is putting together complete performances. Yes, there have been a couple of them, but they're few and far between in terms of 90 minutes of continually showing exactly what we're made of. And unfortunately, in a game like soccer, which is so unforgiving and in so many moments, things can happen that change the game and the result. It's one of the reasons why we've struggled to pick up points potentially on the road as well. And Toronto, look, that first 45 minutes is one that everyone wants to get out of their system. There are a lot of things that went wrong in that 45 minutes. Some of it was bad luck. Some of it was poor officiating. But at the end of the day, you don't go 4-0 down through no fault of your own. And I think the players realized that as well. I think Christian Fuchs's press conference after the game was very telling. He wants to forget about it, but he knows it wasn't good enough, and they're looking forward to getting back on the pitch like all professional soccer players are. All you want to do is step back on the pitch and make up for what you did wrong.
I am curious why we haven't heard from the Pro Referees Association yet about that penalty that was in the box with Kamil Jóźwiak going down and basically getting hip checked. I mean, I understand
it was a straight up, he goes over the ball through his leg. It's not even hip check contact, it's with his feet. And look at his ankle afterwards. We saw a close-up of the ankle and the swelling that was already on. It was a pretty malicious challenge that outside the box it's given all day long. And I can't understand how it's not given as a penalty. It doesn't matter where the contact takes place. A foul is a foul.
I didn't have as much problem with the Fuchs straight red, but like you said, if they had done the right thing and gone to VAR and overturned the play, then that red card never happens and Fuchs stays in the game and would be eligible to play this week. But, you know, in terms of trying to turn things around and get that more consistent play, what do we have to see from our boys this week? Because I do feel like, you know, there is a lot of angst in Ajita right now. A lot of people in the fan base, they're wondering why a move hasn't been made yet from the transfer deadline, which comes your way 8 days from right now. And Charlotte FC still trying to add, we think, an attacking midfielder as well as a fullback from the published comments that we've heard spoken by sporting director Zoran Krneta. But I do feel like, you know, at least for the next three contests, which are very, very pivotal and all coming at home, they got to kind of figure this out, whether or not it's with the same lineup or a changed lineup. I do feel like while Christian Lattanzio wants to experiment, I wonder if right now he's got to just go with his best 11 no matter how it looks.
I think you do. You always have to try and play your strongest 11. It's important to really get that consistency in. But you mentioned, what do you think is going wrong right now? And and what do they need to do differently. It's all about the first minutes. We found ourselves 2-0 down within 10 minutes against Toronto, and that's a big mountain to climb, particularly away from home. And yeah, there were mistakes that led to the goal, and it was a poor clearance, maybe not completely switched on for the deflection, and then the corner, which it was a great play, but at the end of the day, you've given someone, Bradley Wright, too much space to find his header. And so it's all about being switched on in those first 10 minutes, and particularly away from home, that's important. But at home now, like you mentioned, well, with a little bit of tension in the fan base, obviously understandable. Any fan is going to be frustrated when you've lost 4-0, particularly when you're in the playoff push and you're losing to a team that's far below you. It's very important that you go out there and you ease those concerns early on, because I don't doubt that the crowd is going to be amazing still on Saturday. But understandably, if things aren't going our way, you're going to hear that little vibe around the stadium of nervousness. We want to write those nerves out immediately and get that confidence and have the Bank of America Stadium popping.
You're certainly true about that. As we mentioned, 3 consecutive home games for Charlotte FC. They play Saturday against Columbus, on the midweek against DC United a week from today, and then once more against Chicago Fire. These are games that Charlotte FC has basically teams right around them in the playoff line or right below them in the playoff line. It's very interesting to kind of see this next stretch forward, not just these 3 home games, but 5 of the next 6 at home. The only road game is at LAFC. I'm not saying they're all must wins, Jess, but you cannot give up points in any one of these contests going forward, because
if you want to finish
crazy
in that top 7, I don't think it's wrong to call them must-win games, particularly with where the teams stand below you. If you want to keep things in your hands, you have to keep beating the teams below you. You have to beat a couple of teams ahead of you, and particularly your home games. If you're not winning away from home, which obviously Charlotte FC isn't doing right now, 1 win and 2 draws away from home, you have to make your home stadium a fortress. And Bank of America has been a place that's very difficult for teams to travel, but that goes away very quickly if you have a couple of losses. So it's vital that we pick up those wins. We want people to fear playing us, and most importantly, you want to give your fans something to cheer about at home.
Certainly so. We encourage you to continue to put out your comments and the questions. We say hello to our good friend Lucha, who's out there listening on YouTube, also on Twitter, Facebook, and Twitch. Is how you can get in touch with us. We can certainly get opportunities for you to ask us whatever you want about Charlotte Football Club. We also want you to know that we're planning our soccer tennis event. We had shifted it back a little bit. We're going to give you more information on that as it warrants here coming up next month. Very much looking forward to seeing that take place at the WFNZ Doghouse, our flagship radio station right there on the corner of Mint Street and Moorhead on the way into the stadium. But let's get a chance to try and look at the team perspective a little bit, as Andy Quee, Charlotte FC's former goalkeeper coach and now full-time assistant, gives us a perspective on how exactly Charlotte FC can get themselves off the mat and back forward. It's Crown Corner for the week of the 25th of July, and it's a fantastic way to kind of turn the page as we get ready for another matchup with the Columbus Crew, to check in on not only the training ground, but somebody who is a big part of what's going on with Charlotte FC. Assistant Coach Andy Quee, he joins us here on Crown Corner. And Coach, it's great to have you on for the first time, at least with us. So happy to have you here. And first off, thank you so much for taking the time. We appreciate you.
No, it's great to be on here, Will and Jess. It's great to finally speak to you after quite a long while. So looking forward to it.
We've been trying to get you on here for a while, back to your goalkeeping coach days. Just first off, I wanted to ask you, what's it been like settling into, I guess, seeing more of the outfield players on your side as opposed to just focusing on the 4 or 5 goalkeepers you have?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a lot more characters to deal with, more things to look at on a weekly basis, and probably focus on, be more aware of within the team. But it's something that I've wanted to do and been looking forward to, and relishing the challenge at the moment.
But also, a goalkeeper never forgets, still part of the goalkeeper union. How proud are you about your goalkeeper union? I think Chelsea was a key game where we got to see 3 of the players in action. They all shone. How proud are you about the squad that you have in terms of keepers?
No, really proud. I mean, Chelsea was sort of, it was something that brought everything together, really. And, from the very first moment I started with the club, selecting the goalkeepers that were coming in and going through the recruitment process, bringing all the guys in, and then as the season's developed. It's been great to see them grow and develop themselves, and they've all sort of found highs and lows within the season, whichever place they've been taking up. And the other night against Chelsea was great to see the three goalkeepers play well, each contribute in their own different way, and have really positive outcomes for all of them within that. So Pablo I was really proud of, because he's had a tough sort of start. He's not been involved in too many games on the bench, yet alone play. And for him to come on and make a good save towards the end of the game, keep us in it, and then be a big part of the penalties, it's fantastic.
What was your reaction
I'm really proud
to the penalty, Andy?
To our penalty?
To the Pablo save, the Panenka that
Pablo,
wasn't.
Listen, we do our homework as coaches, and Brian Edwards has done the homework with him on the penalties, and there was a lot of penalty takers that they could have chosen from, but the guys did their homework and they knew Gallagher would go down the middle, but Pablo has to be brave enough just to stand there. So he did. He stood there, and luckily Gallagher hit a poor penalty. Let's be fair, but it was fantastic, and it was great for him to save it.
That's very impressive. You guys were even doing that type of scouting, even for a friendly, which is just a marvel in itself. I know the Mad Cat, sits there and tells me how difficult the penalty stuff is.
Yeah, that's my nickname. Andy probably doesn't know that. That was my nickname growing up in
Is that right? Fantastic.
Yeah, bit of a screw loose in goal.
And I do believe her, but if you can put into context for us, Andy, just how difficult that is, especially from the standpoint of just, not knowing whether it was going to be into penalties. Because I know I talked to a couple of players afterwards, and they said, that very much caught them by surprise. How important was it for you guys to keep your goalkeepers focused and centered, and making sure that they were touch perfect when it came to having the scouting reports on those guys going into that penalty shootout?
Yeah, it's something that the guys, they enjoy practicing, especially the goalkeepers, and all the outfield players enjoy taking penalties at the end of every training session, and so that happens regularly, and the players enjoy doing that. And from the scouting point of view, like I say, the guys, our analysts and Brian Edwards, who's working with the goalkeepers at the moment, have gone through the homework. They've got the list, or a long list of penalty takers, and where they may or may not put them. And but at the end of the day, as a goalkeeper, you've got to be brave enough to make your judgment in that moment. To stand still is lots of penalties go down the middle at the moment. There's quite a trend. Because strikers know that goalkeepers, what do? You stand there and look an idiot if you don't dive. So, sometimes goalkeepers will dive when they shouldn't do. But it's you've got to be brave and believe in what you're looking at and the information that you've got. And on this occasion, we were fortunate that it came off.
Without putting a dampener on things, obviously coming off a really tough result, what do you think you as a side can learn from that 4-0 defeat?
There's lots to learn from it. We learned to play in another sort of big atmosphere away from home, and that's where we're growing as a team. There's lots of things that we can learn from in terms of managing the game, and the way that we want to play. And we felt that for periods offensively with the ball, we played better than we did at Miami, so that was a positive. We were caught cold a little bit with the goals, and two or three of their big players, big signings that have come in, performed really well, and they'd obviously, as a team, had a lift from that. So there's a lot to learn from it all over the pitch in every position, and that's what we're doing and trying to put that into practice this week.
I think one of the things that we always try to figure out is how to chase consistency, and that's the one thing that I feel like is always the thing, whether you're winning or whether you take a defeat like you guys did on Saturday. What do you guys do as coaches to promote during the weekend training sessions to try and make sure that is the final product, that you are able to end up getting that consistency over a full 90?
Yeah, this is a process for us that's going to be ongoing, hopefully. Developing the style of play that Christian wants to play, and us as a staff want to play, and that's in possession and out of possession. And it takes a while to get there. It's a long road. The players are working hard; they're learning week on week, and they are developing and getting better. unfortunately, sometimes you come up against some good opponents, and that's when you're really tested. And you know, your bravery in possession, out of possession comes into play, and whether you can transform what you do in those moments into the games and what you've learned in training, put that into game and match situations. So, you know, we'll continue to develop the style of play in and out of possession, and keep working at it, and you know, that consistency will come.
I think all the fans, us as journalists, you as player and staff, are excited for the 3 games in a row at home. How incredible has the home atmosphere been, Andy? You've been around the game for a long time. Have you ever experienced anything like that or the continuous support in an inaugural season?
No, I mean, you know, the what would compare for me was my first couple of seasons at Stoke City, when we were promoted to the Premier League, and you know, our fans were that 12th man, and that was a big thing was made of that. You know, we were hailed as the loudest team in the Premier League at that time, and the loudest fans, and it was fantastic. And in a similar way, our crowd are helping us here. You know, they're a fantastic group of supporters, and you can't ask for any more. And you can see that, you know, we'll be spurred on and helped and encouraged by the fans when we play at home. So, you know, we're looking forward to the next 3 games.
I know that this probably got a lot more fortified as you saw him develop as a player for Charlotte FC. But when you were trying to find the goalkeeper for this squad, what was the moment like when you figured you had something with Christian Kahlina in the scouting and searching process to try and find that person to wear the number 1 kit?
Yeah, I mean, it was a long process for myself and the rest of the staff, the scouting team, and Zoran. It was a tough process because there's so many different things to take into consideration. You know, you're looking at goalkeepers playing inside the MLS. First of all, you're looking at goalkeepers from Europe, from different cultures around the world, and will they fit in, and what characteristics can they bring to the team and the squad? Ages, fitting into salary caps and everything. So there's so many things to take into account. But we were really, really happy. We knew once we were getting the deal done that we got the right person. And in terms of his character, I think he's shown everybody that he can be a leader, and how he's helped the squad, you know, on and off the pitch. And you know, the saves that he's made, important saves, big saves that he's made, and the way he's helped us in possession as well to build from the back has been really good. So, no, I mean, so now we're really pleased with his contribution, and, you know, long may it continue, really.
And another goalkeeper that stands out is, of course, George Marks in his rookie season, was drafted from Clemson. How impressed are you with his development? I feel like you can't tell he's in his rookie year when he stepped on the pitch.
No, I mean, that was something that struck me from the start, and the rest of the staff from the start, that, you know, we watched him play for Clemson, you know, in the college finals, and you know, he was so calm and composed, and that's probably one of his biggest characteristics, as well as his shot stopping ability, speed, agility. But he's a great character. He's a real thinker. He wants to learn about the game all the time. He's always trying to improve and looking for little bits that he can get better in his game. So, you know, he's a real good character, and so far he's been fantastic to work with, and obviously the rest of the staff enjoy working with him as well.
Andy, you guys get Columbus Crew in this weekend, a matchup with a squad that you've already drawn against. They have a brand new addition from somebody, at least that you has joined the squad since you last saw them, with Cucho Hernandez. How does he make them different?
No, I mean, they'll be a tough proposition. We know that. We had a really solid game with them away from home. And we know there were a couple of players light on that occasion as well. So, you know, their team will be a little bit different this week than it was to last time. And, you know, they've made a good addition, and we're expecting a tough game, that's for sure.
All right, we always like to have a little bit of fun on Crown Corner. One fun one for me that we've debated on the broadcast a couple of times. Don't give away any secrets if you're not allowed. But if you ran out of subs and your goalkeeper went down, wasn't able to continue, who would you put in goal? You can give us a couple.
Oh, if I've run out of subs, a player or a coach?
A player.
Oh, a player.
Amongst the outfield players.
I think at the moment I would put DJ in goal.
Okay.
just
Really?
because of his size and his reach. Yeah, DJ's the one.
I think he'd be brave as well.
No
Yeah,
Fuchs?
yeah. No. DJ's the one for me.
That's good. That's a good answer. Andy Queen, we appreciate the time. Good luck this weekend against Columbus. Bring us home 3 points, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
One of our favorites, Andy Quee, the assistant coach, and somebody who I know that when he was the goalkeeper coach, you had a little back and forth with when we had a chance to be on the field a couple of times before matches, and he had promised that next time you get a chance to go out to practice, he said to bring your gloves. So.
Yeah, he did. And I'll take him up on it eventually. But we just had a bit of back and forth. I was a ball girl. I'll call it that. I was a ball girl for him during a practice one time. But all fun and games, and obviously lovely. That was wearing my England shirt because England through to the final against Germany in the Women's Euros. So I'm going to be up early on Sunday to make sure I can get home in time to watch that one.
That's the only time I'm going to root for England between now and Christmas because
Okay.
it's basically it. After Sunday, no mas. It is U.S. versus England from now until Black Friday between you and me.
It's going to be wild, Black Friday. I'm sure a lot of people are looking forward to that one.
We are planning a watch party, by the way, in Charlotte at some establishment. We're trying to make that happen. So for you guys who are not only fans of the U.S. men's national team, but also fans of us.
All fans of England.
I meant fans of U.S. men's national team and fans of us. We'll have an opportunity for you to watch that with us coming up here on the day after Thanksgiving. We got a very interesting barn burner this weekend, though, with Columbus. We mentioned with Andy Quee, Cucho Hernandez, the Colombian striker. He's somebody who has really changed what they bring to the table. They look like a lot different side than the one that we saw. And, you know, to be honest, that was a game where I feel like we all kind of thought that we deserved more from that match, the way we played in the second half. The one goal we conceded was the unfortunate gaffe by Christian Kahlina. That's a match I do feel like at least we started to kind of find our stride a little bit, the way that we played in that second half against Crew.
We did, and Andre Shinyashiki, of course, got the equalizer pretty soon afterwards, so we responded to that adversity of the Kahlina era. But like you say, Will, I think Columbus were down several key players in that match, and this is a different Columbus Crew we're facing with a different confidence level. They're in the playoff positions now, and that's why it makes this match even more important from a Charlotte FC perspective, particularly looking forward to the season. They're a side that's hitting their stride, unbeaten in quite a significant amount of games, if I remember correctly. Off of a scoreless draw, Cucho Hernandez was kept relatively quiet, I believe, but he is a player that can hurt us. He's a player that, if we give him time, can really do some damage. Other than against Toronto, we've done really well keeping teams' big star names quiet. I think it's going to be a very busy night for our defensive line, and that's why it's going to be key that we know where players are playing. On Saturday, we saw some tampering with the back line, and I think that we need to make sure we have a consistent back line and players playing where they're most comfortable in the back line, because I think against Toronto we looked a little out of sorts.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth when it comes to taking down the superstars from other teams. I know Hani Mukhtar got a penalty against Nashville, but he was kept largely in check. I go back to even all the way at the beginning of the season, Chicharito did not look like himself against us. Joseph Martinez, kind of that guy as well. You know, we had a chance to see him in a couple of contests, and I do feel like it's something for Charlotte FC to really watch because of the fact that they are going to have to, like you said, tinker with that back line. They presumably will not have Christian Fuchs, despite the fact that we get a Hail Mary from the folks at MLS when it comes to his red card that he took in that match against Toronto. They will have to make some sort of tinkering. I would think, you know, a Mora, Walks, Carujo, awful back line is probably what's going to end up having to happen.
And I think that's a really good back line, honestly. I think that Walks looked a little uncomfortable at the fullback position, which was to be expected. Him and Guzman Caluja had been having a really good partnership. So I'm not too worried about that one. I think we'll miss the leadership of Christian Fuchs, but I think that we have players perfectly capable of slotting into those positions and doing a job.
Well, we have seen at times this year when Fuchs hasn't been out there, Jess, that the leadership has needed to come from other places, and it's been difficult. I think Walks brings a lot of that, though, and I think he'll at least keep them somewhat on the right path forward. It's just about whether or not they can get the link up right and whether or not they can get that right combo in the midfield. Because ever since we had that Quinn McNeil, Sergio Ruiz, and Brandt Bronico triangular good run of play, that's kind of tapered off a bit, and they're trying to figure out what that mix looks like here going forward.
And we need to be physical. The likes of Darlington Nagbe, who is a player that a lot of US men's national team fans will know. He's got MLS experience in abundance, but also such a strong player, very comfortable in possession, got a physical side to him. That's a player that we need to win our duels against. And I think that Charlotte FC needs to bring their A game in that midfield. Like you say, well, that's where a lot of errors have come from, because we look at a 4-0 defeat and you're always going to point fingers at the defense, at the goalkeeper, because you consider those goals against so much to do with defense. But if you look at it from a different perspective, it's got to get through the midfield first. And a lot of our issues were coming from that lack of physicality in the midfield, that lack of connection between the defense and the midfield, or the offense in the midfield. So it's an area that's so key in every match, but in particular in a match where Columbus like to enjoy being physical in the midfield. They like to create chances from the midfield. So I think it's going to be really important that we step up. And every player on that pitch that played against Toronto is a little bit embarrassed. And I'm speaking from my experience as a player. No one wants to lose 4-0. And I've lost 4-0 before, and it's horrendous. And the defense are going to want to make sure they keep a clean sheet. The defense aren't going to want to concede anymore. The midfield aren't going to want to be held scoreless. You've got to remember, we're the first side in 29 games that Toronto kept a clean sheet against. That's going to hurt the strikers' egos a little bit, to put it politely. So I think everyone out there is going to want to come in and really show their A game, particularly in front of their fans at home.
What did you think? And we saw him trading off to the side this week. We'll see whether or not the ankle allows him to play this week. But what did you think of the at least first game experiment of Kamil Jóźwiak at the attacking midfield?
He works really hard. I think that's fair to say. He tries to throw his body around to be physical. I don't think the chemistry was there yet between the midfielders, but I don't think it was a terrible failure of an experiment. I just think that it was the wrong game maybe to experiment, particularly against a Toronto that was feeling themselves so much at home.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. It wasn't. I understand what they were trying to do going into the match, but I think that the importance of the match itself led for, maybe something more of a continuity standpoint, and the tinkering that Lattanzio did with the lineups, putting Walks at right back and putting Jóźwiak in a position he hadn't played yet other than a friendly against Chelsea, I think was something that might have been better served for another contest, or at least a couple more weeks worth of training to try and get him more up to speed there. But we'll see what happens this upcoming weekend against Columbus. To learn a little bit more about the Crew, let's check in with a member of their broadcast team, Neil Sika, on Crown Corner. Little opposition research time as Charlotte FC gets ready for a rematch with Columbus Crew. Draw last time out, but it's a much different squad this time around. Neil Sika will catch us up on what's going on with the Crew as he joins us here on Crown Corner. Neil, first off, thank you so much for taking the time. We appreciate it.
Well, Jess, great to be with you. And dog days of summer, right? For whether it's your first year in the league or 27th. So we'll see how this weekend plays out.
Yeah, it does seem to be kind of that time in the league. Obviously, since we last saw you, a big addition with Cucho Hernandez, the Colombian, has really brought an infusion to this squad. How do they play different? What has he brought from your standpoint, from what you guys have been able to observe over his first few matches?
He's brought everything worth the $10.5 million, which they paid for him, that's for sure. I think watching and knowing the goals that he scored with Watford and also in his time with the 3 different stints in La Liga, there's always the ability for him to find the back of the net. I don't think that anyone was questioning that. What's impressed me is his ability to work and cover as much ground as he has in the attacking third, wide left, wide right. He's comfortable even dropping deeper, playing the 10. And I think those were all parts of how he had to play at Watford on certain occasions, but now he's the guy being the 9, and chemistry that him and Lucas Elrayan have developed, and it's also brought up the level of the players around him, the wing play of Diaz and Etienne. I know they didn't have a goal against New England, but they had 7 shots on goal, 13 chances. There were opportunities there, and I think you're going to see a more consistent attack from the Crew with knowing what he offers game in and game out.
And on a larger scale, how big of a compliment is it to the Crew and to the league in general that a player of his caliber, a player that's played in the Premier League, that's played in La Liga, like you mentioned, selected to come play here in this league?
Sure. That's a huge facet, and it's not LA, it's not Toronto, it's not New York, and you're getting a guy who's only 23 years old, about to enter his prime, not in his prime. I think his best soccer is still ahead of him, and the ability for Tim Bezpachenko, his scouting staff, Caleb Porter, Issa Tall, to know that you may have an opportunity with someone who's about to be relegated. And I think they took a long, hard look at clubs, not only in England, but in France, that maybe had those players who could have been right on the borderline. Because honestly, if he's a $15 or a $20 million signing and Watford by chance was staying up, but he still wanted to move, he's probably not in Columbus. So a lot of things played out in that factor, but he's a very hardworking, disciplined kid. And I think that goes back to his upbringing when he grew up in Pereira, Colombia, and made his debut at 15 years old. And his folks instilled that in him. And I think his leadership showed. He was a captain at 18 at Huesca. And those traits, those things that really you can only acquire through going through life circumstances. And knowing Pereira is not a huge city, I think Columbus felt like home in a lot of ways, or had similar characteristics. So it all blended together to fit well, because the Crew definitely needed to make a seismic type move up there, knowing that earlier in the year, one of the top players in club history, and Josely Zardes, wasn't scoring. You hadn't figured out the forward situation. So it's been a great marriage so far through the first 4 games. And I know that they're delighted to have him. And he's Cucho Mania, as I've dubbed it, has come to Columbus and really across the league.
And you touched on it a little bit there, Neil, just because I felt like, Zelarayan almost kind of felt like a lone wolf out there because of the departure of Zardes. What kind of effect has it had on Lucas? Just because I feel like that's something that was a welcome addition for him.
Well, one, great players love playing with great players, right? You can see that across the board in any sport, not just soccer. And I think for Lucas, where he had to carry the piano of scoring goals and being the team's leading goal scorer, him and Derek Etienne Jr. shared the lead for much of the season and still are in that position. I think Cucho will eventually overtake both of them, but he could go back to being a playmaker and a number 10 that they brought him in to be. Out in Tigres, he was out wide right, wide left a lot, finally coming into play the 10, but also relying on his sustenance from outside the box, his free kicks, his goals. Now he can take a little bit of an edge off, but he shouldn't totally go away from that, because they still need some supplemental scoring, and he's definitely a guy that needs to bring it to complement a guy like Cucho Hernandez. But I think in just chatting with them moments ago, I think their backgrounds being very similar, being aware of how they played and growing up in South America and in tough conditions, there's a synergy there that you just can't teach by running them out there and training day in and day out. I think they already had it coming in, and I think for Lucas, he feels that he's got a guy that's can go toe to toe and win a game just like he could on a regular basis, and that's a huge lift when you have 2 of those guys as compared to 1.
Obviously, Will mentioned a 1-1 draw last time these two sides faced each other. What do you think the Crew needs to do differently if they're to get 3 points out of Charlotte this weekend?
Yeah, look, they walked away from that game probably feeling like they let 2 points slip away, and that's kind of been the case here in their gorgeous new stadium. They've won 10 games out of the 22 that they've played at Lower.com Field. They had the lead in that game, and I know a couple of goalkeeping errors kind of led to both of those goals, but they're not taking Charlotte lightly. I think they know how good they are at home with the 7 home wins, I believe, knowing that it's a tougher place to play and going down there, and they've kind of fit the bill of a first-year team. They've had their moments of disappointment, but they've had their moments of ecstasy. And I think for the Crew, they know that they've played really well on the road as of late. They have to now look at themselves where they are in the standings, 6th in the East. And I've said this for years, and you can go back to when it was the 13-team league. It is now, this point in the postseason, you need to beat the teams below you in the standings, or at least take points. So I know they would be happy continuing their road unbeaten run. But just the disappointment here, they had 4 straight sellout crowds in a row, and they won one of those games. Now, granted, it was over Cincinnati. So when you don't win your home games, you're going to have to make up those points if you're going to keep pushing toward where you want to be in October and November, and that's on the road. And they've played better on the road right now in a stretch of games than they ever have under Caleb Porter. And I think they'll be looking to come out and fix maybe the little idiosyncrasies that were with them in the New England game in terms of the execution and scoring goals.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, this is really the kind of crunch time as it were. And I know a lot of folks from Charlotte FC are trying to figure out what the transfer window looks like. But I think also whether or not they have the first fruits and the building blocks to make a successful product stand up here. Do you feel like the foundation is there with this squad from what you saw in that first result to make sure that this is something that's not, 1 year where you play all right and then the next year you're kind of figuring out yourself again? It seems like it has something that has some staying power, at least for us. I wanted your impressions as well.
You're speaking of the Crew or of Charlotte?
Of Charlotte.
Of Charlotte. Yeah, I like the spine of with what they're doing. The Shinyashiki acquisition. I like Bender in college, watching him play at the University of Maryland and calling some of their games. Brent Bronico, hometown kid, who's essentially shined and played really well on the spine of that team. And of course, Harrison Awful, even though he's in the twilight of his career, I think there's some good personality that Charlotte has in the squad. And they came in here with a good game plan, and Christian Latanzio is a big reason why New York City started having success under Patrick Vieira. So now that he's got the keys to the car, there's no reason to think that he's going to set the lineup right and put them in a position. And I know they kind of ran into this new buzzsaw in Toronto over the weekend, but I would expect a hungry group coming out, and I like the direction that they've put together. Not too high, not too low. Typically what you'd see out of a first-year team. And in this league where there's a heck of a lot more spending than there was when you came in as an expansion club 5 to 10 years ago, there's something to be said for that. So as long as they can hang around and make things interesting, I think Charlotte fans should be happy with that.
Neil, appreciate the time. We look forward to having a good match this weekend, and best of luck rest of the way.
Thanks for having me on. You too. Have a great broadcast, and all the best.
Neil Sika joining us here from Columbus. I never know whether or not to say good luck to them on Saturday, because I know that you and I both want us to have the luck.
I think it's polite. Good karma, and good karma happens back to people. So I think it's always good to be polite, and we can wish for their tears on the down low.
I'm kind of with you. I really hope they get it done this weekend, because I do feel like this is the opportunity. We've been talking about how important it is to get a good run of play going, to get a streak going. And right now it's put up or shut up time. It has to start this weekend.
It has to. We're on home. This is the time to really get your momentum. 3 games at home in a row. It's a great time to build. And if you build that momentum, then you go on the road for a tough match. But everything is possible when you have that belief. And, like I say, these are games against teams in and around you that we really need to pip out of the post if we're going to get up into 7th.
Matthew Krenz on our YouTube channel saying, yeah, it's the right thing to do. Then you hit him with the Mayfield if you take home the 3 points. That's correct. That's a reference to Charlotte FC's new quarterback, Baker Mayfield, who wore short. He made the mistake today, Jess, of wearing long sleeves in Spartanburg, South Carolina during training camp. That was not advised with how high
he made that mistake, but he did shout out Charlotte FC in his press conference for beating Chelsea. So pretty cool that he's paying attention to the soccer world too.
We hope you guys are out there as well, just like you were against Chelsea. 3 matches upcoming this week at Bank of America Stadium. We're home against Columbus on Saturday, Wednesday against DC United, and then the following Saturday against Chicago. Should be a lot of fun out at the bank this week, and hopefully 9 points to the good for Charlotte FC. We'll be on the air on Saturday coming up at 6:30 for a 7 o'clock first kick. Jess, I'll see you then.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. 3 wins. Let's go.